All right, so we've started recording. All right, thanks everyone for coming to this, for the launch of the Leadership Fireside Chat series. This series is meant to be, leadership bites of knowledge and wisdom and experience from people that have walked the path, had the tough journeys, survived it, and thrived, and lived to tell their tales, so that we can all benefit from it. Right. So today we have Lavanya and Vinodh with us. I'll give a little bit of introduction to each of them from my side, my personal introduction. I know the audiences love that. So I'll start with Lavanya. Lavanya has been my friend for over a year, and she's someone whose judgment I trust. She's been through incredibly challenging times, professionally and personally, like a lot of us have. She's been, VP at the VP level with Match. I held very important leadership positions at Facebook, had a journey across India and the US, and she continues to grow and challenge herself. She's moved from operations into sales recently, and she's always a person to turn to when you have tough situations, because she balances extreme pragmatism with creative problem solving. And that's what I love and cherish about her. Lavanya, is there something more you'd like to say about yourself?
I'm thoroughly embarrassed because I'm not used to this at all. So thank you so much for your kind words, Paroma. I'm just work in progress, as most of us would like to put it. The journey is only 1% done, and there's so much more to learn and grow. I look forward to learning from everyone on this panel and the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lavanya. Let me introduce our other panelist, Vinodh. Vinodh very secretly actually has a PhD, so I should be calling him Dr. Raghunathan, which he never tells because he's so modest. I only discovered that yesterday, I think. Vinodh has been fairly dormant in PhirSe, but more active on BKB. He's held important leadership roles across GSK. He has a degree in chemistry. And then now he's at Intel. He and I share a semiconductor background, so we've seen a lot of, at least I have seen, and I'm sure, Vinodh, you'll talk about your experiences, layoffs, and now the new word that's come across in our industry, cutbacks. This is a new concept to me, but I'm sure Vinodh will talk about it. Vinodh, would you like to say a few words in your own introduction?
Just me, I don't usually go around telling people that I have a PhD, because I've moved so far away from what I did in my PhD. But yeah, work in progress, as Lavanya said, right? A lot of work needs to be done still. I've been with Intel for 17 years, so I've seen this rodeo being done a few times, and it's always tough. So that's all I wanted to say, and I'm looking forward to the questions as well as learning from everybody else's experience here. Like people like Prashant, for example, a lot of experience, right? So
yeah. Wonderful. And thank you for mentioning that, because I'm really creating this platform, this Fireside Chat series, for multiple leaders to come on board and share their stories, because stories are how we human beings learn from each other. And stories are what takes us through difficult times. So coming to the topic for the day, the hottest topic right now is the layoffs and cutback situation in our industry. I'm going to start with my experience with layoffs and how that really has changed the trajectory of my career in many ways. And then I'll engage the panelists, and then people will have their questions, right? So one of the most dramatic experiences in my professional career was March 17, 2008. I was a very junior marketer at the time, barely had 3 years of experience. And that day, my company, I was with National Semiconductor, they decided to lay off 25% of their workforce. And I saw aisles upon aisles of my very dear friends and colleagues just pack up, pick up their boxes and leave. It was for me a traumatic experience because I'd never experienced that before. But it changed my entire career trajectory, because I realized that I cannot have this experience over and over. It's just too much. So I gradually took steps to go from semiconductors up the value chain into licensing business, and then eventually software, where I am now. Through that journey, I ended up becoming an industry expert, and that is actually becoming very valuable to me now in my current role. But that's a longer story for a different day. layoffs has impacted all of us, either us directly or our friends or our family, or we having to communicate to our people that, hey, yesterday you were very valued and today we're letting you go despite our best intentions. So I want to hear from you first, Lavanya. Please share a layoff or cutback related experience in your career, and what insights did you gain that the audience can benefit from?
Since you started with a date, I'll give a date, October 1st, 2016. I was a senior director at a small organization, which had international presence, and I traveled a lot extensively while working there. On that day, my CIO asked me to come in, and he said that I did not have the job anymore. Like, I was asked to leave within 30 minutes of being notified that. Along with that, my entire team, which was working on international operations, was laid off. I just didn't know what to say as he was saying his words that we don't need this team and your leadership anymore. And he had HR in the room, and he was talking about settlement and all of that. I just was dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded. I've never found myself that way. And I packed everything, went into my car, and I just started crying. I was crying for multiple reasons. One, because I had put my personal life on hold to work 20 hours a day for several months for that organization. I was crying because I felt like a failure at that point. And I was crying because I was going to lose all of my friends, like my best friends, even till date, my so-called work husband, everyone were from that organization. And I'd spent over 4 years at that place, and I lost everything within 30 minutes. I drove home, went into my bedroom, and I slept. I cried, I moaned for several days. In fact, I would say weeks. I couldn't get out of bed. And at that time, I thought I was going through some kind of flu or some kind of fever, but it was actually the residual effect of the shock I had gotten. It was only after several days I realized that, that mourning period was slowly starting to wear off, and I realized I was doing better. My experience out of that was it was really a life-changing event for me, mainly because of the emotions that I went through, a gamut of emotions that I went through. I suddenly felt like, from being a leader who stood up the entire team, who launched multiple markets, and I did so great. The CEO of the company actually would always talk to me about things and ask me to come and resolve issues. I felt like I'd lost all of it. I felt I was not capable of doing anything like that. So that self-confidence took a hit. And then, of course, I bought in a place recently at that time, and I was worried about paying my bills and paying for the house, and all of that starts kicking in. So that's a survival. So if you look at that Maslow's pyramid, I was at the bottom of it, like trying to survive. I was not thriving anymore. But as a result of that layoff, I actually got into Meta. Back then it was called Facebook. And I was extremely thankful to my CIO of my previous organization that, thank God you fired me. You laid me off, because now I get to work for this amazing company. And I learned and grew so much within Meta. And my changes towards my career path, where I'm right now doing trust and safety, actually started at Meta. So I owe a lot to the previous organization and to that event. Now, looking back, I can smile at myself and say, yeah, I did great after that. But at that point, it was a huge, huge toll. I was in a middle management. I had to start as an IC when I joined at Meta, and again had to build it all up again. So it's like starting a new life, like as if you're moving to a new country, because you lose all of your credibility. It's not an employment at will. It's an employment at the stress or at pressure that you have to take at that point. And I'll talk about what could have done differently later on, but that's a story of not me laying off somebody, but of my team and my VP who I reported into, all of us getting laid off, and how it took a toll on my own confidence, where I had severe imposter syndrome, that I didn't belong anywhere, I wasn't good enough, and why me? All of that happened to me. But then when I got through my interview at Meta, I was like, I could do this. So that it took 4 months for me. So I have a gap of 4 months in my resume from October through February 2017 that I joined at Meta. Those 4 months were not easy.
Yeah. Totally empathize with you, Lavanya. And the fact that you got through it, you survived it, and then you went on to bigger and better things, that's inspiring. That's inspiring to me and to all of us. And I think that's the message that I think we want people to take, is that this particular incident does not have to define you or your career. That there are other things that will happen, and we have a network and a community of people here to support you. But Vinodh,
and that's
let's
why the
go to
journey
you.
is only
Yes.
1% complete, and there's so much to learn. And I'll talk about what I went through in that process and what could I have done differently later on. But that's a story that defines who I am. I was very ashamed of myself at that point. I did not share about this with anyone. It took me a while for me to get over and come to terms with my loss. But it was truly a loss at that point. Not anymore. Now I'm proud of what I went through and how I got out of it much more resilient. But it's not an easy journey. That's all I can say.
Yeah, understood. Vinodh, I know there have been stories in the news about Intel specifically. You don't have to talk about your employer. You can, phrase your answer however you like. But same question to you. Please share your experiences and insights with this.
Mine mirrors a lot more like your story early on, Paroma. Fortunately, I have not seen myself on this side of the layoff, but I did come very close once in 2016. 2016 was the last major round of layoffs that happened at Intel, right? So I was running a team of about 20-ish people at that time. On Thursday evening, our earnings announcement comes out, and the CEO makes an announcement that, hey, we'll be doing some retrenchments, right? At that point, no criteria given out, nothing. Who is like, and then immediately the entire team is panicking, and I'm also panicking because I'm also one of those people. Nobody has much information, and then in the middle of the night, we get an email. Managers get an email saying, "Hey, this is the criteria. It's based on last year's performance, so on and so forth." And then also a calendar hit for the very next morning. As soon as the criteria came out, I knew which of my employees were affected, right? The next morning was probably, I hated going to work that morning because it was like there was no input asked for by any measure or means, right? It was probably um, not an objective way to actually carry this out. But I don't know if there is any objective way at all. Hearing some of the news stories that are coming out of Google, right? So the next morning, we actually the employees were brought in. HR was the one that was asked to give the news. So I was there sitting there. The HR guy is reading the message to these affected employees one by one, and immediately asking them, "Please give me back your laptop." Collecting the laptop, signing them out. They lose access to their badge almost immediately. And the next thing was even worse, where the HR guy tells me, "You're the manager, go to their office, clean up their stuff. Here's a box, bring it back here." Worst, most brutal experience. Um, I didn't even have time to process this or even talk to the employee, right? The employee was just walked out. And then 30 minutes later, it's business as usual. Go back, do what you want to do, and business is running. The heartlessness of the whole situation is tremendous, and I empathize with these employees. I did my best to connect them to the network that I had, but in the same lines as what Lavanya mentioned about resilience, I think in both those cases, those employees landed much better than in much better positions, in much better careers than they were in the path at Intel. One of them went back to academia, now is a professor with tenure. Another person decided to take a career pivot, um, took the severance, took the break, went back, did an MBA, and now is working in the banking sector. Right. So I think the lesson I got out of it is, yes, it happens. The key is resilience, as Lavanya says. Fortunately, I didn't have to go through the experience myself, but I said I came close to it, right? Because right after this is the environment the company was in. This was the second consecutive year of layoffs. And I got into a situation where I was not in very good terms with my line management.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see that if this again repeats next year, I'm going to be in that chopping block. So what I did, good thing for Intel is Intel allows you to do these gigs where if you can find time, you can go and volunteer, moonlight with other organizations within the company. So I found this other organization. I was a very hardcore engineer working in the fab, process engineering, everything, right? And I'm like, I need to up the value chain here because the there are only so many fabs at Intel. If I get laid off from Intel, then it would require a serious rethink on my part in terms of how I'm going to rebuild my career after having stayed at Intel for 10 years, right? So I did this gig in a business group, and that opened up opportunities for me. And right before the next review cycle, I was able to move into a business focused role. As Lavanya said, I had to lose my team, become an IC again, um, and then rebuild everything from there, right, to where I am right now. Um, that threat of getting laid off is real, and it's very, very debilitating in terms of how you go about with your daily life as such, right? Every time there's it's in your in the back of the mind saying, hey, how am I going to get through this? But I think what I learned is resilience is the most important thing. During that period when I was trying to get an exit from that difficult role into another role, even within Intel, with the network that I had for 10 years, I had to approach at least 40 hiring managers. I interviewed for 15 jobs and I got one offer,
Wow.
right? So again, it gets to your psyche in the sense that, hey, I've done all of this in the past. I've been a high performer. I have this, जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं मेरे पास ये तो PhD है कुछ ये सब कर कर आया हूँ and then what is happening to me, right? Um, again, my learning is, hey, nothing is personal, right? There is, everybody has different agendas. Most of the hiring managers would tell me, hey, we just went through this big layoffs. You're coming from a difficult role. I don't want to take a you don't have a direct experience of doing this thing. I don't want to bring you in. I don't have the capacity to take the learning curve that you're going to take. All of that. It's not personal at all. Everybody has their own push pulls when they're trying to recruit you. So you will, when you're going through this process, you will go through a bunch of rejections and such. The key is to continually tell yourself that you're worth it. You're look back at the past, look at your achievements, and keep giving yourself that motivation that you can get through this, right? So those are my learnings, and the resilience part is like that's the biggest thing that I've learned. It's like you have to be very resilient. You have to go by the hour, almost by the day as you take it, and don't let it get to your head.
That is so insightful, Vinodh. I wanted to add one thing here, and I want to get both your and Lavanya's thoughts on that. As an individual contributor, when I was one, this was not clear to me, but it's now become clear to me as I've grown into management roles that oftentimes when companies decide who to lay off, it is not by performance, right? Because layoff has traditionally been such a taboo topic. If it happens to us, we don't talk about it because we feel as if it's a performance issue, and it's not. The way they decide to cut is purely by finance and sometimes just by role. So right now, my company's gone through layoffs and they've just cut out teams. Those teams had great performance, they had average performance too, but the entire team is gone along with their management. So that's not clear to us when we are at the receiving end. That was it performance, was it role? And a lot of times it is just by role. So it's not at all a reflection on the individual's performance or contribution or any of the above, right? What do you think?
Thanks, right. In when I described the 2016 piece, right, that was purely they just decided people who got these kind of rewards they're going to get let go. It was pretty brutal. That was sometimes as a manager, when you're performance managing people, right? Sometimes you want to actually motivate someone and you would manage that with the rewards that you give. And it's part of performance management. It should never, ever be used as criterion for large scale layoffs. And Intel did that once. So this time around, what happened was what you just said. It was purely finance, job role based, or whatever criteria. The criteria is not very clear. My team also got let go in this layoff again this time around. Um, so yeah, while in some cases layoffs may be based on performance, I don't think companies should be doing that. But from a personal perspective, most of the time when layoffs happen, it's because of the business needs. Whoever does that calculation decides with a spreadsheet, hey, some team is not useful enough. And it's never personal to people.
And it should not be
Out
so.
of
I
the
agree with
four
you.
different experiences that I have had, only one was this pure performance based.
Lavanya, you wanted to add a comment?
So I agree with what Vinodh is saying. Nothing is ever personal, even if you're fired. And this will hold good in both ways. My story of layoff was because my international market and the sales were down, and they didn't see a need to have an entire team. So they outsourced a lot of that work. So it was not personal. It was purely a business decision because of the cost and the revenue and et cetera, et cetera. But you have to let yourself go through that mourning process and not make it personal. I mourned mainly because I lost my friends. I lost the people I thought were my family. And I felt like every effort I had put actually went down the drain. And for somebody who is extremely ambitious like me, because I don't know anything else to do other than do my work well, other than study well. So for me, it felt like I was an utter failure in my life. So I mourned, not because I felt like I did something wrong, but because I lost my family. So I would give the same advice to people about mourning and trying to keep all of those negative thoughts like, why me? What did I do wrong? I went through that. And if I could redo that all over again, I would never let those thoughts cross my mind. So even if you're going through a performance improvement plan, always know one thing in mind. None of those actually mean that you are any less or any or somebody's any better. It just means it's not the right fit. If you're not able to perform, it's not the right fit either with your manager who's able to up level you, or it's not the right fit with the skills that you have, or it's not that yourself, and try to find the right fit. Everyone has a good fit. It's like, it's like a marriage. You'll always find the right fit. It's like a partner. So, and I believe that working is much more significant than your family itself, because you spend more than 50% of your awake time working. So you always have to make sure that it works like a marriage. It works, it plays to your strengths. So don't, whether you're laid off or whether you're fired, or even if you feel like you're getting any kind of feelers, do not make it personal. Just take it as an opportunity of saying, maybe this was not the right fit for me, and let me find a better fit for myself. Either from your skill standpoint, your personality, your culture, your attitude, your vision. Those pivots actually make much more meaningful pivots in your life, because you're making those decisions out of rising out of ashes like a phoenix, rather than just making a lateral switch when you're absolutely in your sane mind. So those decisions are more meaningful to you. So take that as an opportunity and don't beat yourself down.
Very well put. Very well put. Thank you for that. For everyone just joining us, we are recording the session. So if you want to catch up on the first part, I will be sharing this after our session is done. But now we are moving to the second part of this session, which is more practical advice from our leaders here. So again, I'll start with Lavanya here. Your top tips for the audience on what steps to take if they've been either laid off or experienced a salary cutback.
I'll talk about my own things that I've done terribly badly. I've not done anything well in my layoff, and that's the same advice I give to my friends or my colleagues, and I'll share the same thing. One thing is apply for unemployment benefits right away. Every penny counts, especially in this time and age when we're talking about recession, we're talking about inflation, etc. Apply for your unemployment benefits right away. There is usually a time limit that they have. So don't be afraid to, don't sit on it. Just apply and at least start seeing some cash flow happening. That helps in making some more sane decisions rather than being very desperate. Then the second thing is, as I said earlier, don't make it too personal for yourself. It's not your fault. No matter what happened, it's not your fault. It's a learning. It's a lesson. It's an experience, rather put it that way. And the third thing I would say is don't rush and be desperate to pick up anything that comes your way. And I did have few offers between my layoff and the time I joined at Meta. But I feel like on the hindsight, if I'd waited and spent a couple more months interviewing, I would have probably taken a lateral job instead of taking an IC job. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm just saying that I did, I jumped on the offer I got from Facebook. I could have negotiated better. I could have looked out for myself a little bit more. But again, you know how November, December back then was, it was very slow. I wasn't seeing any movement in my resume or stuff like that. So don't rush and don't be desperate to pick up any offer that comes your way. Wait it out, use that as a lever to do further negotiations, and use it as a lever to realize that you can do better and you have it in you, basically. So build that confidence, don't be desperate. Apply for your unemployment benefits, share the news out. As I said, I hadn't spoken about it for several years because I felt like it projected me as a failure. It felt like it was something that I was not proud of. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to share your stories. A lot of people can benefit out of it. That's what I realized later on. I'm like, I could have shared. I could have learned from others' journey, and I just didn't do that. I was in my own shell. And then the final thing, as I said, moan it, give it your time. When people are working in organizations, we put in our heart and soul, blood and sweat. I literally do everything. I give it all in, my heart and soul, when I work at an organization. When I'm not in that organization, I cry. I really have to get over that relationship, that breakup, or however you want to put it. So moan your breakup, get over it, pick yourself up, and then start looking for something new. Don't cut short on the mourning period is what I would say.
And that's such a nice way to put it, because like, as you're saying, Lavanya, I'm reflecting myself, and my work is part of my identity. And if that changes outside my direct control, then who am I? Am I the same person today that I was yesterday, or am I someone different? And how have I changed to adapt to this? There's a lot of these abstract questions that come to you, and you start questioning yourself as a result. Which you're saying that we shouldn't, right? We have to stay true to who we are, continue working through that. Vinodh, I will ask you now for your top tips, please.
I think Lavanya captured a lot of it already, right? I would actually, though, slightly modify her answer in the sense that, or from my experience, it's not always very practical to just totally say, hey, don't take the first offer that comes to you, or desperate. People have different pulls and pressures, right? Classic example would be people on visa, people having to leave, and all of those things. So I think we need to balance that out. I get the larger picture. Hey, try to find the best fit for you, but sometimes you may have to make those short-term adjustments in your life while you're looking at the long-term picture. One thing that I think the key is always, always, always focus on how you can be better as you move through this journey. Even when you have a job, every day it's about thinking about that. What is that next role going to be? Where do I want to go? Is it going to be the same company, or is it going to be something different? If there's going to be something different, what is going to be driving me, right? I think doing that homework while you are having a job in a safe position helps. Now, going to the next part of your question about pay cutbacks, I will tell you about it because I'm experiencing one right now. Intel went through a whole level pay cutback, right? There it's just looking at it's probably taking a look at your finances, making sure that things are well planned out for the year, right? In the sense that prioritizing is the key there, in my opinion. So in my case, I'm prioritizing the trips that my kids want to take because that's my higher priority than anything that I wanted to do for fun for the rest of the. In the large grand scheme of things, the pay cut isn't that bad for us. So I think at the higher level, it may not be even that big of an impact, but that's how you handle the pay cut in terms of prioritizing what you're doing, looking at your expenses, making sure that you optimize for cash flow, as Lavanya mentioned earlier. But as a layoff, yeah, some people may have pressures and pulls. Like I personally felt when I was having the axe over my head, I needed to take and when I went through these 40 different hiring managers, nothing was working out. Personally felt I needed to get out and I jumped on the first offer that I got. And I don't consider it as a mistake, but at that time, I did feel like, man, I'm making a huge compromise here, going from running a 20% team to um, now doing an IC role. But the bigger picture there was, hey, I'm able to laterally move from one organization to another in terms of skills, able to use some of these skills, and it's opening up this new area for me where I had absolutely no background in, just dealing with partners, almost outbound product management, managing all of these. I would not have even been exposed had I not taken that role, right? So I think keeping the big picture is important. Where do you want to go? Sometimes you may need to make compromises in the short run. So
Hmm.
that's all I had.
Yeah. And do you think that this is also a good time to think of not just company moves, but also functional moves? Somebody, in product engineering might want to move to applications or some other kind of functional change and which requires upskilling. So spending that time in somewhat of a meaningful, I know the word meaningful is difficult when you're in that situation, but do you think that sort of self-investment, I know some people from this group are also going through that right now, do you think that is a good way to spend that time?
Absolutely, I think. And having clarity over your drivers is also very important, right? What drives you as a person? What drives you in the job? So I kind of maintain a matrix of what drives me. Let me actually paste it in the chat here. On the professional side, my important characteristics are these. Like, I need to have a sense of accomplishment, constant learning, there is financial compensation, aspiration to higher and higher leadership, right? And then what I do is I rank these in a scale of 1 to 5, for example. Then every role or every job that I'm looking at, um, I go through this. Hey, what will be the score for this job? And then rank it out and then rank it with my current job. So kind of gives me some sort of quantitative way to make the decision over multiple parameters rather than looking at one parameter. Hey, there I'm going to get a 10% pay raise or 20% pay raise, but it may be a totally miserable job I may not enjoy. So doing that homework and constantly maintaining that helps me. Also, when I go through the job postings and everything, it tells me where the skills gaps are. If I see a job that's quite interesting and then, hey, this may give me sense of accomplishment, but I need to upskill myself. What are the avenues to upskill myself there? Is there something that I can get on the current job by adding responsibilities, or do I need to go do something else? Is it a volunteering opportunity? Something of that sort, right? So that constantly being in that um, or maintaining that matrix has helped me in the past. And at least maybe delude myself that I'm making data-driven decisions.
Nicely put. Lavanya, do you want to add something?
So, Paroma, I like your question about what skills that we can acquire during this time. For me, acquiring skills is a very growth mindset. But when we are going through this kind of an adversity, it's hard to have a growth mindset where we're not thriving, we are in survival mode. So it takes a lot of courage, lot of endurance to actually even bring ourselves to a thriving and a growth mindset, and try to see what can I do out of this, and learn a new skill, and try to expand my my sphere of influence or cast a wider net. That mindset only comes when we are in a thriving mode, when we are in a when we are not in a survival mode. For me, when I go low on my professional life, I try to gain a win, and I need a win. Maybe not on an everyday basis, but I need a win to going back to Vinodh's sense of accomplishment. I need a win every day. I need a win every week so that I can keep it going. That fuels me. So if I go low on my professional life and things are not looking good, then I try to take a win on my personal life. I've learned a lot of skills in my personal life, like paddleboarding, or getting into roller skates now, or if there's a painting that I always wanted to do, or I want to learn a piece of piano, or if I want to do a cook, be my chance to kind of come back. So that's the word, the comeback or the win. If I'm doing low on my personal life, I piggyback on my professional life and try to get a win there. That's what happened during my divorce and during my personal challenges, that I actually doubled down on my professional life and kept myself busy and focused there. So again, to each their own, whatever works for you folks. If you feel like you need a win, go for a win, because that will make you feel more confident, make you feel more relevant, and that'll fuel your energy and your body, and you'll be able to look forward to the next day. So it's on a day-by-day basis. Look for small wins, look for big wins. But if that's what keeps you going, go for it. Some people get energy by socializing, by talking it out. So I'm an extrovert person, whatever that is. And again, a skill need not specifically be a technical skill. It could be even an interpersonal skill. If that's something that you've been sitting on for a while and you have an avenue to gain that, get to a growth mindset, get to a thriving mode, and then start acquiring those skills. Otherwise, those skills will not stick around because you're just doing it for a checkbox. It's not going to be a checkbox, right? You should be able to put it into practice also. So clear your mind, think about how this is going as an investment for you, and then how it's going to help you in the future, and treat it as a win for yourself. And that's the only way of approaching this.
Yeah, so one thing I'm
As
noticing,
cliche as it sounds, right? This too shall pass. And all the past experiences that I've seen in my network of people getting laid off, most people landed better than what they were doing. They ended up using it as a pivoting opportunity, as you mentioned, Paroma. Most people ended up much happier at the end of the day.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm noticing both you say, and this is my learning from what you're speaking, is you've talked about emotional resilience, and sometimes we wonder what that is. I think, Lavanya, you said this well. It's about intentionally managing your negative feelings, knowing that that's human, but taking a step back and drawing on other resources. Maybe it's friends, family, maybe it's your hobbies, maybe it's something else, to flush those negative energies out so that you can take a zoomed out view and actually manage this like a project. You're getting that next job, you're getting a better job, and the steps that you will take to get there. Right. So yeah, I'm sorry, people. I know Lavanya's audio is a little bit glitchy, but she's been out of power for 3 days in a row. And being the warrior she is, she's still here with us and she's still powering through. So thank you, Lavanya, and apologies for the glitch. But we did have a question here in the chat from Hema. Let me just bring that back. In a year like this, Hema asks, in a year like this, we know what the macroeconomic environment is like. What should one optimize for? Should one optimize on growth or staying in the job where you already know the team and folks where it's a little safer right now? What do you suggest?
It's a very personal thing, right? When I look at something like growth is a mindset personally, right? You always, most people, like at least ambitious people like most of us around here, you need to have that in the mind all the time. And that doesn't mean that you are always chasing that or finding that next job or anything like that. That's how I see as growth. But I think Hema's question is, hey, should I go for a new job because I'm seeing the growth there rather than just stay in? I think it depends on the situation of the company itself, right? And it's a very personal situation. I'm not sure how we can give a general answer there. Um, what it is when you're having to make a call like that, again, try to make it in some sort of a quantitative way, how you define growth, how you define safety, and weigh it out, right? So that you take that knee-jerk emotional decision making out of the picture, sit on it, make that, try to create a matrix of different drivers, try to make it as quantitative as possible. That's all I can say. I'm not sure if we can answer that as a general way.
And if I can add to what Vinodh is saying, Hema, if you're looking for change in your role, change in your what's the word, pay, then look for a new job. Again, what are your objectives and what are your goals? If you're looking for growth, and growth, again, as Vinodh said, it could be growing laterally, growing vertically, however you want it. So look for what your goals are, and then we should have a mindset of being relevant at this point, being there for tomorrow. The world is moving towards metaverse, or the world is moving towards austerity or efficiency, or whatever we're calling it, the year of efficiency this year. Google is doing that, Meta is doing that, everyone is doing that. So try whatever ways you can be relevant and be there for tomorrow, not just focus on what am I doing today, but how will I not become a history tomorrow, but be relevant for tomorrow.
Thanks, Lavanya. That makes sense. So basically, one of my friends, colleagues from the past, he is hiring for a growth role. He contacted me for that. Like I also liked it, but so the one that I am in right now, so I was trying to decide between this and that. So thank
So
you.
look at the drivers for both the jobs, Hema. That's what I would say, right? In what does it give you at the end? Try to quantify it in some way and look at it. And don't look at it in the next month, next 2 months, next 6 months horizon. Look at it over a decent period of a couple of years. What opportunities do you have in both vis-a-vis both the jobs, right? That's what I would say.
Agreed. If time is not of the essence, Hema, keep your long view very clear. Think of longevity of your own career and your own skills. And if you're not time bound, like I need to make a decision today because I'm going to lose my visa or I'm going to lose my benefits or whatever have you, then look at your long view. Try to whiteboard the pros and the cons and see which one actually gives you that projection or that trajectory to go to your North Star.
Okay. Thank you, Lavanya. Thank you, Vinodh.
Wonderful. We do have one more question, which we will end with. But before we do that, just wanted to tell everyone, folks, we are recording this session. If you missed the first part of it, I will be sending this out so you can catch up. And my second announcement is that, public speaking is growing as a skill. So I would like to offer my one-on-one coaching for anyone wanting to come and practice or learn more about how to speak in public, and sort of use this as a platform to grow and build that muscle. So that's out there for you if you should choose to use it. Let's go to Jay's question on the chat, and we will end with this one because we're quite close to the top of the hour. So Jay asks, and this is for both Vinodh and Lavanya, how does one handle rejection? This gets more painful often than letting go. Getting rejected over and over. Vinodh, you sort of alluded to that. But how would you really handle that?
I think, as cliche as it may sound, by being absolutely kind to yourself. It's not personal, as I mentioned before. You have to be super kind to yourself. Decision making on job decisions, even when we are hiring, there are so many different things that goes into it. So it's not usually, hey, some candidate is totally not fit for the job or anything like that, right? So having that vision that it's not me, it's just not meant to be. We couldn't find the right fit at that point is the way to get through that, right? If you start taking it too personally, that's when it becomes more and more painful, where it then starts playing on your confidence, and then it kind of becomes a vicious circle, right? So absolutely be kind to yourself. That's my only advice.
Very nice.
Same here, Paroma. I've gone through that. It's extremely hard, especially when you are laid off or in a situation. So just as I said earlier, it's just not the right fit. It's all about being at the right time, at the right place. If there is a rejection, it's not because it's on your skill set, maybe it's also not a cultural fit. So after that, actually, I started asking more about me. As I said, it's also have to see if it's a good fit or not. So the rejection can be bi-directional, and always treat it as an opportunity for you to know that it was not going to work even if you took that job. So it's better now, treat that rejection as a blessing in disguise, and it just means that you're not at the right place at the right time. It's hard, but then keep practicing it, as Vinodh said. Just be kind to yourself and keep practicing that over and over again, that this was not meant to be.
Nicely put. And Vinodh, what do you do to be kind to yourself? Any specific tips?
I'm the wrong person to answer that. I'll let Vinodh answer.
It changes over time. These days, I torture other people by going to karaoke bars and singing loudly. So that's my being kind to myself these days.
Very nice. I think I've used spas in the past, just something to pick me up for the moment. And there are endless ways, so we can always build a list collectively.
Of course,
but Korean shows.
That's what we started with. Thanks for having us, Paroma.
Yes.
Thanks, Lavanya.
So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Lavanya and Vinodh. You have given us enormous insight. We will continue the series on a 6-weekly-ish basis. So we'll bring more of the leaders out here to help us, through these times. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Very insightful.
Good.
Thanks,
All right.
Paroma. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.